So, Michael, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to talk with me today. Introduce yourself to everybody.
Michael Arterburn. I was police officer for 23 years. I worked in internet crimes against children and domestic violence for a pretty large portion of my career. I started the Killer Bee Tactical Media during the pandemic, and it's just kind of taken off from there.
Very cool. And you just to kind of explain the killer bee thing, you have been a beekeeper before, right? Is that it?
I still am, yeah.
Okay.
I have 13 hives, and it's what I was supposed to do when I retired. But it's kind of now my hobby, and then this is kind of what I do now.
Very cool. So, you went from police work to beekeeping. You just like stress in your life. Is that it?
Yes, so.
So, what led you down the path to becoming somebody involved with law enforcement?
I wish I had a really cool story that was like, I've always wanted to be a police officer and I just like helping people. And while those are true, um, I was pre-med in college and decided being a doctor is not what I wanted to do. And it's all I thought about. And then I was like, now what do I do? And I was almost getting ready to graduate. So a buddy of mine, I was leaning toward something like the FBI or the ATF, going federal. Um, and a buddy of mine was going to apply to a local police department, medium-sized police department, and he was like, "You want to ride along?" And I'm like, "Man, I don't want to be a police officer." And he's like, "Well, just ride with me, keep me company." So I jump in the car with him. We go downtown, and you know how governments are. It's like they have certain days where they're handing out applications and all that. And it's you fill out the form and go from there. So I'm standing in line next to him, and the lady hands me a form, and I'm like, and she's like, just take it. I'm like, yes, ma'am. So I take it and I fill it out with a golf pencil, not thinking there's no way I'm gonna get. I'm not even gonna try.
Right.
So make a long story longer, a year later, I get hired and he doesn't.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he gets hired a year after me, but it just shows there's no rhyme or reason on how they hire people.
Okay. Well, that's cool that you went to it. And so, when you first started, what were you doing? What was your first responsibilities?
I worked patrol, and I worked
Mm.
in a urban environment. We worked a shooting a day,
Mm.
so we were busy, and I loved it. If I could have just stayed at work and they fed me, I would have done it for free. And that was probably the first 3 years of my career.
That's awesome that you found something that you clicked with. Now, you talked about you eventually kind of work your way in your career to working specifically for crimes that are targeting children. Kind of tell us a little bit about what that entails.
So everybody says the same thing. That's the one job I wouldn't have. And
Mm.
after a while, I guess I was probably maybe 10 years into my career. You get so jaded on like all the street violence. Kids are pretty much the ones that you care about.
Mm.
So when I was asked to come to Crimes Against Children, and I gave it heavy consideration, and then I was like, yeah, that's where I want to go. So my area, I worked all physical sex crimes. I worked all of it, but my focus was internet. So at the time, I went to like all the FBI training and all that, and I hunted internet predators, and I did that for about 7 years.
Okay. And I know that that is a job that takes a lot out of you as, a professional and as a human being. So, I admire you for stepping up and taking that job that, a lot of people just aren't qualified for.
It does. My opinion, those detectives should go through every 6 months. They should get some kind of psychological evaluation to make sure they're doing okay, because you literally see nightmares, just awfulness. Um, but the other side of that is I never have to question on whether or not I did some good. That's never
Mm.
a question that comes up in my retirement. I know I did. I know I helped some people, um, and got some true bad guys off the street.
That's awesome. So, you and I are talking here as dads. We have other parents who are listening to us. You know, with your focus, being on the internet and everything, what were the common tactics that you were seeing being used by predators to target kids online?
Almost always well, when I would set up my character on, because I would pose as a child online,
Right.
and it would have to be realistic because they know there are guys like me that are hunting guys like them. So they'll probe. And from real life calls that I would go to when, grandma calls at 9 o'clock in the morning and her 13-year-old granddaughter has disappeared, and she hands me a computer and says, please find my granddaughter. That's it. That's all you get. So I would take the real life situations that, the child is, they're, you know, they have a electronic device in their room. At the time it was a computer, but now it could be a cell phone.
Hmm.
They have all kinds of privacy. They don't have any monitoring whatsoever. Grandma has no idea how to get on the phone. Just the whole scenario all comes together. So that's who my character would be, and that's what I would see a lot um, of real world situations. Um, a lot of times, my character's mom wouldn't be home because she was a nurse, and she
Mm,
worked she
okay.
worked odd hours. Um, let's see what else. Basically, any vulnerability you can mention to where mom doesn't understand me, that kind of thing. And those guys, they prey on that.
Hmm. Yeah, so they're just looking for those vulnerabilities. They're looking for whatever clues that kids are giving them that would give them an insight to being somebody valuable to them. Is that what it is?
Yes. Yep. Yep. And they'll have a special relationship with my own kids. I tell them we don't keep secrets.
Hmm.
That there's no secrets. There's surprises, but
Hmm.
we don't do secrets in our family.
Right, and that's a good point because like a surprise is a birthday present. A
Mhm.
secret is something much darker than that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. So are and I know this is different because each individual predator is different, each situation is different. But what are predators looking for in their perfect target? What are the things that when they see it, they're like, okay, I know that I can exploit this. What is that they're looking for?
Um, Usually the age group between like 10 and 15 years old, that's what I saw the most. And that's usually when kids have the most turmoil in their life on who they are, and they're trying to figure out life. There's usually a lot of conflict with their parent. Usually they don't have parents. Um, and That's the role that the predator is trying to fill. So he has an in.
Right. Okay. So there's a lot of parents who are out there who are like, my child is smart, they're well adjusted, they would never fall for a predator's tricks. You know, what do you say to parents like that?
Everybody says that. And like I've had parents that have told me my child would never be involved in bullying. And
Hmm.
then they get a monitored phone to where, the AI is looking what your kid is saying, and you'll get an alert saying, hey, there's bullying. And you find out that it's not your kid that's being bullied, it's your kid that's the bully. And you're like, this is a side I didn't know about. Um, and that is one of the things that I would recommend to any parent is to get some kind of monitored phone for their teen. Don't give them an iPhone. iPhones are meant for privacy. That's great for adults, not for kids. Kids need limited privacy when it comes to online stuff. Like I said, everybody says that. My son was at a young age and it was on a gaming console. And
Hmm.
gaming consoles are the Wild West. There is no monitoring. The government, from what I understand, is doing better in it because terrorists were using gaming consoles to communicate.
Right.
But they're not looking for predators, they're looking for terrorists. So my son was at that age where he didn't understand the difference between online friends and real life friends. So some of his friends introduced him to these other people that were posing as children. And I ended up pinging one of them's address and it came back across the border.
Hmm.
So you think it's never going to be my kid, and then you find out, well, it can be, under the right circumstances.
Right. You make a great, point about the whole console. These boxes are kind of the Wild West. I have to talk to my son regularly that, Fortnite will call your list of contacts friends. You've never met these people, and
Right.
chances are you never are. So you don't really know who they are. And so I try to help him understand an online contact is very different from a friend that you have in school.
Right. Oh, I always say that real life is more frightening than anything that I could drum up. So I bring up things like I posed as a believable 13-year-old girl online for years.
Hmm.
And if I could do it, an old man, then anybody could do it.
Right. Right. Yeah. And again, it kind of goes back to this parents thinking, oh, it would never be my kid. It would never do that. But, the lines of not being able to be monitored on these gaming consoles or being able to monitor on like a cell phone and that sort of stuff really, I think, can help parents understand that while you have raised a good kid, they're still going to make mistakes and they're going to make mistakes in a digital world where nothing really disappears, right?
Right. And I always say that our job as parents, the kid's job is to make mistakes and learn from them because it's better they make them when they're under 18 than when they're adults. Um, but my job as a parent is to make sure they don't make the fatal mistake.
No, right. Right. Kind of talk us through like sextortion is something that I think people are talking about more and more every day, and I think that's a great thing. What is that process? What does it look like?
So the way that works is it's almost always boys because boys are stupid. We were boys at one time.
Right.
Um, and these conversations happen within 10 minutes. So it's fast. It's not like it lasts for weeks. Most of the scammers are out of the country. So after you get that IP address that goes to wherever that's not in the United States, the case is basically over because we don't have jurisdiction. So what happens is a random female profile will contact your son and chat him up and convince him within 10 minutes to send this person a nude. When they do that, the person says, "Oh, guess what? I'm actually a Nigerian scammer and I want you to give me $50, Venmo it to me, or go into your parents' wallet and get a credit card and give that to me." Um, and they're going to demand something. Um, there have been boys I'm sure that you've read about that have committed suicide because of these demands. They're too embarrassed,
Mhm.
to come to their parents. They think it's the end of the world. Absolutely have that conversation with your children. No matter what it is, we'll figure it out. It doesn't matter what it is. One of the great things, as bad as AI is, as far as changing images and things like that, one of the best things that has happened is that they're using real life child faces and then they're making an AI body. So
Mm.
all your son has to do is say, "That's AI, that's not me." Because what they'll do is they'll say, "I'm going to send it to your whole contact list." And they may or may not do it. Usually they don't because they're businessmen. At the end of the day, they're scumbags, but they're trying to make money. So they don't have time to send your whole contact list that nude image you sent of yourself. They're going to move on to the next one. Never send them money because that never ends. It'll be one after the next after the next. Just cut off all communications and tell them that you notified the FBI, and usually that's it. Um, but yeah, one of the I guess silver linings is that now every kid, if they do send that image out, they can say, that image is not me.
As a dad, I'm sure you've had these hard talks with your kids. What can you do to encourage parents just to get this conversation rolling? What would you suggest that they do? How would they have this conversation? Maybe something that worked in your life or didn't work, and you're like, man, I shouldn't have done it this way. I would have done it this way. What is a way that parents can actually say these words to their kids?
Um, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has really good icebreakers, like on how to talk to your kids, and they have videos. If you want to show them a video that are age appropriate. And I think that's the main thing is that I try to walk that line from seeing all these nightmares in real life to not scarring my child for life, but educating him and bringing him up to speed to like real. This really does happen. This is real world. Um, so it was always a balancing act, and I probably started that when he was 7,
Mhm.
because it's a digital age, man. My kid could fly on that iPhone on apps that were called toddler teasers, and like identify the circle, and he would hit the circle and all that. So that part was great. but also seeing the part where I know there's bad guys that have access to him, and I need to limit that as much as possible. Um, so I would say the key to that is being age appropriate and having those open lines of communication early. The one thing you don't want to do, and it was hard for me not to do, is something happens online, your child comes to you and tells you about it, and your response is to take that thing away. And like you can't have your PlayStation for a week now. All you've taught them is that you're going to punish them if they come to you. So that's the one thing you don't want to do. And like I said, it feels natural to do that, and you want to protect your children. But if you do it once, they'll learn from that, and they won't come to you again.
Right. So you just got to foster that honesty and that open communication that they will come to you if something bad has happened. That's a very good point to make. Um, yeah, that's awesome. So I know that kids when they're being, talked to by some predators, they exhibit different behaviors. They're maybe not as happy or they can't sleep, that sort of stuff. What are some of the red flags and behaviors that parents need to look for to understand that something might be going wrong with my kid?
You know your kid, and you know when something's off. And if they start acting weird, and I don't, that's different for every kid. I'd start paying attention to that, especially if they start getting more and more secretive with their phone or their electronic devices. If you come into the room, first of all, they shouldn't have any electronics in their room to begin with. It should be computers and gaming stations should be in public areas, and they should be in places where you can just walk by and look at the screen and see what they're doing. If they're real young, I advise against microphones unless they're just playing with their friends and that's it. But if your kid sounds like he's 7, he shouldn't have a microphone. Um, if they mainly if they start being secretive, if you say give me your phone and they refuse, um, that's a big red flag. Or if there's any kind of hesitation or whatever, um, now they have apps that look like other things that are actually texting apps. So it may
Mm.
look like it may look like a calculator when you're scrolling through it and it's totally innocent and they need this for school, and it's not. It's a texting thing that you're not checking. Um, Another thing that they will have access to because of school and at school is Google Docs. Google Docs acts just like Snapchat. You can invite as many people as you want and type back and forth and then erase it, and then it's like it never happened.
Wow, that is, that's something I had not heard, but yeah, that makes complete sense that you could just type in whatever, drop in an image, drop in a link, that sort of stuff, and it's all right there in Google Docs.
Yep.
Man.
And the school
And
allows it.
yeah, and that's what a lot of people think when they have a school issue device for their kid that, oh, it's got to be 100% safe, and I have discovered that's not the case, at least in my district.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, we have to look after the school devices as well. We have to treat them like we would, anything else. Um, so let's say you have a child that has sent a text, sent a picture that they weren't supposed to. They haven't told you. Somehow you find out. What do parents need to do next? How do they turn this into a teachable moment? How do they address this so that they can resolve it in a positive way?
Um, I think that open line of communication, explaining the dangers, explaining that, the internet is forever. If you, whatever you upload or whatever you say, it's there forever. And you might not be thinking about college now or a future job, but all those things are on the plate, and you never know how far back a college or a job is going to look to Google your name to see what kind of online activity you've had. Um, if they do something that is, first of all, images under 18 of genitalia on a child is illegal. It's like heroin. You just can't have it. That includes your child, that includes you, and that includes the general public. Um, so if that does happen, you would want to contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC. I work with them all the time. They have a database of all the illegal photos that are out there that they know of, and they attach an age to an image, and they give it what they call a hash number, and they put this, and it's more unique than a fingerprint to that image. And that way, if your kid's image shows up on one of my bad guys' devices, I don't even have to see the image. The computer goes through and looks for that hash number and says, oh, that's that image and it's illegal. So now I got my bad guy. Um, they also have a program called Take It Down. So if your kid does get posted somewhere, they have resources and things set in place to where they can notify companies to say this image is illegal, it cannot be put up, and then the companies have to take it down.
Okay. Those are two awesome resources to have. As we wrap up here, we've talked a lot about, what parents can do to be proactive. Is there a positive story that you can share about maybe work you did or your team did to really help a kid who was in a crisis situation so that whatever it was they were facing was made a little bit easier by what you guys did? Or maybe there's a big bad guy you took down. Of course, I know you can't say names or anything like that, but is there a story like that you'd like to share with us to help us understand that there are good people like you out there fighting for kids?
Um, Gosh, there's a bunch. I mean, over the years, I probably put away 100 people. The What I was saying a little bit earlier that when you're working child crimes, the cases are tough, and you will carry them with you, some of them for the rest of your life, because you can't unsee something.
Hmm.
Um, and the upside is, like I said, you're actually helping an innocent child, and you're trying to correct a horrific thing, and maybe get them in contact with counseling or whatever they need early. But also, juries are sympathetic to catching child predators, and all of my cases were pretty easy in that it was on a screen and I'm recording the screen. So all I had to do talk to a jury is say, "You see that? So did I." And this is exactly what happened. And so there's no question on what happened or anything like that. Um, the conversation for of a sexual nature with the child, the conversation itself is illegal.
Mhm.
And even a lot of people don't know that even if it's like a grooming situation to where they say, okay, well, when you're 18, I know you're 14 now, but when you're 18, we'll get together and we'll do the deed. That's an illegal conversation too. Um, but when I worked with the federal government, because I took my cases federal, there are heavy penalties for these types of crimes. And like I said, just that conversation can get you 10 years, mandatory minimum 10 years. But we would do them one more and we would make them meet. So these
Mm.
dudes would actually show up to my decoy, and then we'd have a takedown team and all that. Um, some of them brought weapons, some of them brought restraints. I had people bring drugs, um, sex toys, you name it. Um, so yeah, one less bad guy on the street hunting hunting children. And the wild thing is that when you're doing interview and interrogation, I have to get that confession. I don't
Mm.
necessarily need it, but the jury wants to hear that guy say, I really am attracted to a 10-year-old. Because normal people don't understand how that's possible, and that could be reasonable doubt.
Hmm.
So, man, I'd go in and I'd wear a Hawaiian shirt. I'd be as non threatening as possible because these bad guys are not like bank robbers.
Mm.
They're introverts. There's a reason they like children. Um, and if you go in there and try to bully them, they're going to shut down, or
Hmm.
they're going to ask for a lawyer. Um, so yeah, and I think it's kind of almost tribal. I think there's something in us that knows a sexual relationship with a child is wrong. And I think it goes back to caveman days where the people in the village will kill you or they'll throw you out of
Hmm.
they'll throw you out of the village. Um, so meeting a guy, arresting him, getting him to my office in the interrogation room and getting him to admit to me the deepest, darkest secret he has in like an hour, it was always quite a challenge.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like it. And it's you make a good point because we always think that these predators are like these monsters that sit behind these keyboards, and in a way they are, but these are introverted people that probably maybe if you looked at them, you wouldn't think that they would be somebody who could do something like this.
And it can be anybody. And I've said before in my videos, nobody gets a pass. I don't care if you're clergy. I don't care if you're a police officer, a lawyer, or a doctor. Until I'm done with my investigation, nobody gets a pass. Because if you look hard enough, and you'll find that it can be anybody. Now, usually they'll intentionally position themselves around children, so they'll have jobs or like be, I don't know, scout leader or something, and they'll have a job around kids because they're putting themselves in that environment. But
Right.
almost always they never had a record. So I'm
Mm.
getting 10 years of prison time to somebody that's never been caught committing a crime.
Right. And so, like a lot of times, like I coach youth basketball, so I always have to go through and do a background check. And
Mhm.
I know from having conversations with folks like you, these people don't have records. So there's a lot of times like the basic background check won't catch these folks, right?
No, they never been caught committing a crime. It's not that they've never committed a crime.
Right.
Um, and with sex predators, they evolve. So like what they were doing 5 years ago is probably not as bad as what they're doing today, and they've evolved and gotten worse. So they may have only been talking to kids 5 years ago, but now they're like trying to open some kind of relationship because they're evolving. Kind of like how peeping toms are dangerous because they're going to evolve as well.
Right. You start off in one place and you end up somewhere else. And given how technology is changing, how relationships are changing, social media, I feel like this problem is going to get worse before it gets better. How do you feel?
Um, I think with the AI and the tech becoming better and better, um, I mean, you can use it, it's not good or evil by itself. It's how you use it.
True.
Like with a monitored phone, I don't know if I can mention Bark or not, but
Yeah, fine.
uh, they're doing. I don't think anybody else is doing what they're doing. And having it from my kid when he was, 13, and it was invaluable. Um, eye opening. I tell people all the time, just be ready. When you get that phone, you give it to your teenager, just be ready because there's a whole side that you don't know about. Um, and it's just like I said, it's just growing up, kids making mistakes, and hopefully they don't make the super serious ones.
Right. You and we are older than the internet. This was not something that we grew up in a household that had these sorts of rules. This is stuff that we're learning as first generation digital parents. So
Yep.
we're making mistakes too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Very cool, man. Well, Michael, thank you so much for talking with me today. Where can people find out more about you and your mission?
My webpage is killerbeetactical.org, and you can go there and it has all my. I'm on all social media, name it, and I'm on it. I'm bigger on some than on the others, but if you follow me if you're on Facebook and you do Facebook a lot, I'm on Facebook.
Very cool. Yeah, I follow you on Instagram. I think my wife follows you on TikTok. So yeah,
Okay,
it's really cool. So you're at both of our phones, man. I appreciate what you're doing. I know that you've retired from law enforcement, but you're still using your skills to help people. Man, God bless you. I appreciate you.
thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you. God bless you guys.